This is the Doing Scary Things podcast. I'm Katie. I'm a veteran photographer, a serial entrepreneur, an aspiring author, and a relentless optimist. I'm a slow-talking, deep thinker from the Appalachian Mountains.
I'm Anna. I'm a prodigal musician, an accidental psychotherapist, and I'm living life mostly by experiment and endless curiosity. I'm a redheaded speed talker from a Midwestern farm town.
The purpose of this podcast is to talk to people who are doing some pretty scary things in their life about what it takes for them to push past fear and keep themselves going every day.
We'll also unpack the vulnerable things we're pursuing in our own lives and hopefully offer encouragement to you wherever you are on your journey.
Man, that was brilliant.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today on the very first episode of the Doing Scary Things podcast. Since it is the first episode, we thought you'd want a little bit of backstory into mine and Anna's personal lives and how we got to where we are today. Here's a little about Anna.
Yeah, I grew up in the Midwest in a cornfield that I'm very fond of still. I don't live there anymore, but all my life since I was a little kid, I really wanted to sing. Like, singing was my thing. I wouldn't say that I was super awesome at it. I got ridiculed a lot on long family car trips for singing with headphones over my ears where I couldn't hear myself at all. So I was just singing like terribly, really loud in the car.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. They have videos to prove it too. It's great. I would also do things like make up song titles for country songs because, of course, I was listening to like amazing 90s country all growing up. And I just was really connected to music, and it was just a driving force in my life all through school. I was, playing instruments in band. Shout out to the low brass section. I was singing in elite audition choirs and stuff like that. And so I really just thought, like, I had a really clear understanding, I think, implicitly back then that music was a real part of the fabric of my whole self, right? And kind of what I enjoyed so much, I didn't even have to think about it. It was just natural. But when I went to college, like, that time got closer and closer where I was going to have to start auditioning for stuff my freshman year. And I kind of really just chickened out of it. Like, I just thought there's so many other vocalists who are better than me. I also really thought, well, I need to do something that's going to make a good living. And, my kind of fantasy about music wasn't in any kind of framework that would make a living so far. Like, I had no concept of that being really possible for me. And so I just decided I needed to find something else that I loved too and do that for a living. And hopefully music would still be part of my life. But I think I really took a big hit kind of interpersonally by not auditioning. And I really did regret it, but couldn't necessarily admit that to myself. So off and on through college and the few years after that, I actually wound up pursuing psychology as a career and went on to get my master's in clinical counseling psychology and practice therapy in a private practice. And all that was great on one hand. Like, I did really enjoy it. I'm really fascinated by people. But, I never knew where music fit. And there was always a sense of unfulfillment with that. So I really waffled really hard between, okay, it's okay to include music in my life. I need to find a way for it to be there, and just cutting myself off from it and being like, no, that's foolish. I'm not going to pursue that because, I need to focus on my career. So anyway, I've been really torn about it for years and years. There's been a lot of ups and downs, which I'm sure we'll wind up unpacking some more of that. But the last 3 years, something has shifted for me, and I've really been pursuing it in that wholehearted way that I used to when I was a little kid. Even though I do still have my counseling and psychology career, it's like I'm finally able to pursue making music a priority again and pursuing it and growing it. Doing it that way and taking it seriously in that way is really scary. And that's exactly why it's a scary thing that I'm doing. It's the scariest thing because it means the most. And it's something for me that's very much a returning to. So that's kind of my background, where I come from. All along since I was 11 years old, I've been writing songs, again, very much off and on, but it's been amazing to not only nurture myself as a songwriter, but also as a singer, and to really put some stock in what I'm doing and to like value music as more than just kind of the societal messages I heard about it. Like, I'm very much involved in constructing the importance and the viability of music in my life, but that was certainly not always the case.
You said you didn't have a realistic expectation of, you didn't believe that music could make you money, essentially. Mm-hmm. And yes, I'm sure everybody can relate to that when you're in college and choosing a career. Like, money is unfortunately,
yes,
a big concern for most people.
It should be, yeah, for sure. But a huge part of that for me is that I knew how much money I was borrowing to pursue this other career. So there was that too. Like, I didn't have
go to college.
Yeah,
right?
Like in my family, I guess, and just in my conception of things, not going to college was not an option, and yet nobody else was going to pay for it besides me, or actually future me, because I was just taking out loans, because that was just like the normal thing to do, and it was expected of me, I think, very much to go to college. And so for me, it was that thing of like, well, no matter what I do, I'm going to have to go into a lot of debt for it. So what can I do that's going to pay it back, that I am still going to be interested in some kind of long-term way? Also, I was already dating the man I would marry, and he was a professional musician.
Johnny P,
touring pretty full-time at the time in his band, and he was like an amazing rock musician. And so somewhere, I guess, in just like my limited perception of things, I thought, well, it was limited because I definitely thought I'm not good enough. So that was like a core belief about this whole situation that helped me make decisions, which is really unfortunate now. But he's like an amazing musician, and I want him to have all the freedom in the world to pursue that, So I thought on some level, like, well, it's not viable for both of us to do that. So one of us has to do something that's like more stable, right? In air quotes. Stable, whatever that means. I grew up as into an adult and realized that stable is not what it's cracked up to be. And it's actually just not what it is at all. So that's pretty interesting. It wasn't anything I held against him either. Like, I wasn't resentful at all. I thought, wow, he really has a gift, and he needs, if we're going to be joining our lives together and like building, our future, like, there's got to be plenty of room for that to continue. So that was my own doing. Like, I prioritized kind of his music career, so to speak, over any potential music career I might have, just because I really didn't think mine was viable anyway.
And let me just ask you, because I'm curious, and we've actually never talked about this. Do you think he realized at the time what you were doing? Was that an actual conversation ever?
Yeah, like, I don't think it was something we talked about to that extent. I think he would probably say he was well aware that I didn't think I was good enough to do music as a career. I don't think he had any reason to put that all together, that an underlying, like, drive for me to find something else to do was also about him actually being able to do it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that was just part of it, but it was a big part of it because I was so proud of him and like valued his gifts so much. So, it's like I was trying to be a little over accommodating in a way. And I don't think I talked to him about that. But even if that hadn't been a thing, I still had the sort of fundamental flaw of I'm not good enough to be a musician for real, so I need to find something else anyway. It just got a little more complicated with him in the mix. But yeah, I don't think that he realized that was kind of like a direct trade-off for me, and that he was part of the reason.
Well, the reason I ask, and I'm sure we'll get to this later, is that is very much a big part of my story.
Yeah.
And something, Dan and I have been unpacking for the last couple of years is like, I sort of made a decision similar to that at one point, and he really didn't know that I had made that decision. He didn't,
right.
And, he didn't ask me to make that decision.
Right.
And that when you're married, that is a big important piece.
Yeah.
Of like, this wasn't something we actually talked about and made together.
Exactly.
You know, like that can come back to haunt you.
It's so true. It's like such a huge decision.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it at the time.
Yeah. And like listening to your story, like that sounds so sacrificial and, you know, and,
right.
And like, and again, I can totally relate, but it's like it's like you, in hindsight, maybe didn't have to go that route. But
yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to not feeling good enough. You have to decide what's most important to you and find a way to kind of go for that no matter what.
If it's possible or if it's appealing to you, like spend your energy finding a way instead of finding the 999 ways that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like,
those are going to be much easier to find.
Oh, for sure. People have all kinds of like, oh, I have 7 more for your list of all those ways it's not going to work out. It's hard to make that shift until you've really like resolved within yourself to pursue it no matter what, you know, and almost without an attachment to the outcomes, which is also really hard. Like, especially if you're a goal-oriented, like driven person, like I would classify both of us that way. So, you know, it's like working around your own personality and your own bents and your own foibles. Like it's hard to keep your focus on finding the way or multiple ways to actually see it come through, you know?
Totally.
It's definitely not where we gravitate as people. Like we don't naturally go for, let's find the solution when it's something that scares us.
Yeah. Okay, so to go back to your story a little bit, so you did become a therapist.
I did.
Happily married.
2 cats. Thank you for asking.
2 cats, and they seem very happy. Let me just say,
they're so
you're
happy.
Doing something right because
they have the best cat life.
I mean, we could just look at your Instagram and know how amazing those cats have it.
There's like 2 categories in my mind on social media. There's cat and other.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, what was that?
Did you?
I did.
Okay, anyway.
That was amazing. I can't believe I didn't
You totally missed it.
I
Where
did.
are you today,
Did you see the deer in headlights on my face? I was like, oh my gosh. 2 categories. One is cats and the other is other. And so I try not to put two cat contents next to each other. I try to have at least one other in between them, but you know.
I appreciate your restraint, but you know, I get that that's
but
hard.
I could use more restraint.
No, you're
probably could.
You're good. Anyway, so life's good. Like from an outsider's perspective.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Like I always think about things the way, and I'm sure other artists at least can understand this, and hopefully all sorts of professions, but it's like the way you're answering questions at like a Christmas dinner with family, right? It's like
here's the
what
snapshot.
Are you doing?
Yeah.
What, you know, is everything good? Are you happy? You know, so it's like, so you'd gone and gotten this master's degree, like you open up your own practice.
Right. Make everyone call me master. Don't forget that.
Hey. Pretty sure you had like your name on the door.
Yeah,
I mean, like we're talking,
like legit.
Yeah, big
legit.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then, what was there like a? And I really don't know this, so I'm anxious to hear the answer. But was there like a really sudden shift in your mind, or was it like a gradual, like this thing keeps creeping back in?
Yeah.
Or like walk us through how this kind of shifted.
Sure. So it's interesting because music and my psychology career, like grad school and forward, have always been oddly intertwined, but like, I mean, and I know I make it this way, but sometimes very much at odds with each other. Like, during grad school, for example, I was part of a country band, which was, you know, my 5-year-old self's dream come true. It was so fun. I was singing background vocals, which I love harmony, and so it was my fave.
And let's just say, we're not going to name names, but this was not just like a country band. This was like, this guy's getting ready to sign the biggest deal since Taylor Swift. Like, we all knew it was coming.
Right.
Sorry if I'm jumping ahead. But
no,
like,
you're
this
good.
was like a big deal.
Yeah, it was happening. Like, it was super exciting. I may or may not have been in said band with your husband.
Right.
Which was super fun too.
Right.
I love him.
And all of our other best friends.
That's right. It was seriously a dream.
Yeah.
A dream within a dream. You know, just like, yeah.
What was happening?
Making really fun music and
sold out shows.
Yeah. You know, opening for like really big well-known bands, like the whole thing. So, and for me, that all happened relatively fast. And so that was a huge like roller coaster for me because I was like, oh my gosh, basically plucked out of obscurity, like literally going from reading my grad school textbooks on the couch during rehearsal to like participating in rehearsal.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like Cinderella, you know? Like, it was amazing. And so, and my husband was also playing bass for this band, so that's also part of why I was, like, around, just hanging out at rehearsal to begin with. I would like to clarify. I wasn't just a creeper. But, I mean, not that I'm not a creeper, but that was what made me
in that instance,
that's right.
You were very legit to be there.
I was, yeah. So that was all happening, like, through the course of while I was in grad school. And by the end of like, you know, my program, it was like I was finishing up my huge internship of, you know, doing all these hundreds and hundreds of counseling hours and finishing my thesis and defending it and all this stuff. Along the same exact timeline, I was out doing these shows and like, you know, having all the exciting buzz of like what's going to happen. And like, there's literally a moment in time that we were like, well, do I look for a job to start as soon as I'm done with grad school, or are we going to move to Nashville? Like, it was going to be one of those two things, you know? So, I mean, it was serious. And in my mind, it was very serious. And I was very non-jaded about the music industry and all that stuff too. So I was just like full of hope and optimism about it. For the majority of the band, like that all did fall apart. We did not move to Nashville. The artist still got signed and still like went on to like do the thing, you know, but the rest of us were just kind of left in like the dust as it settled, or that's how we felt about it. And it was honestly really devastating. And so I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll proceed with my plan, which by this point had changed from going on to get a PhD and do research to I'm actually going to do counseling for a while because I really enjoy it. I actually had no plans to be a counselor when I started grad school. I thought I was just going to do the counseling to satisfy the internships and then go on and do research. But I really love the interpersonal work with people. And so that's when I started working under someone else in a private practice setting. At that time too, like I was still really excited about the psychology career concept. You know, I was like, this is great. I want to use all this education I just got. I am super fascinated. I love helping people. Like all that was great, checking all those boxes. And here I was like stepping right into what I would consider the ideal work environment for a counselor. Like I'm out in this really comfortable, cozy little private practice setting. I have so much control over my schedule, over, you know, how my office looks. Like it's just a really great work environment. This was amazing. It was like the best case scenario. And then, you know, before long, I mean, just a couple of years, which is not very long in terms of a career path, I would like to point out. A couple of years into that, I mean, I was already getting so restless and just being like, is this it? And it really was not satisfying. Like when the new shiny of that wore off, that scared me to death. Even though I was helping people and I knew that I was, I feel like I'm actually a very good counselor, you know, and that's no brag, but I feel like I do effective work with people and it's very important work and I value it. But like the personal connection for me with doing that for my whole life was just absolutely not there. And that was really scary. And then, you know, meanwhile on the sidelines, I've been wrestling within myself about music ever since the whole country thing fell apart. And I had just like stopped writing music, just like tried to just smother it, you know, tried to smother it within myself because I just couldn't handle the heartbreak of it.
When had you stopped? Like how long had you been writing even with all the other stuff going on?
Sometime in 2013 is when all the country stuff fell apart. That was also right when I graduated and then, you know, moved on into the private practice setting situation. But I had stopped like pretty abruptly when it was for sure that there was going to be no endless fun in a country band situation happening anymore. And because I was just
It was probably too painful.
Yeah, I was just like overwhelmed. Now, if I feel a lot of pain, the first thing I want to do is go write music about it. But then I was just numb. It was like insult to injury for me to try to write a song about that. So it took me like a couple of years. But eventually, I'm not really sure what happened. I think I just realized I'm going to have to face the truth that I can't just give up on music, and I really can't smother it to death, and it's not going to work. Like, I'm going to be, in my mind, I think I got to a point where I was like, well, I'm going to be miserable trying to deny or ignore it, or I'm going to be miserable trying to pursue it. Mm-hmm. So I might as well pursue it.
That's good.
Like, I got there, and then I was like, you know what? I am going to write about that, and I wrote a song about it. It's a pivotal song for this whole story, for sure.
And funny, I was thinking about this the other day. It wasn't the first song we recorded.
No.
So that's a difference. But it was the first song you showed me.
When we were figuring out, like, what are the songs going to be on this project, at some point it just became clear, like, well, this has to be one of them.
We have to do this one.
Yeah.
Are we going to do it now or later?
That's right. And I'm really glad we did it now. I think it fits in great with everything.
Well, so yeah, let's go ahead and just tell that story. So we were hanging out with a couple of our other girlfriends, and I guess you had just mentioned to me you had a song. I don't know. I don't even remember. This was 2015. So I don't remember if I knew you wrote a lot. I feel like it was a little bit of a surprise, and you were like, but I have this song kind of demoed out. Mm-hmm. Like, do you want to listen? And I was like, yes.
Yes, because I remember it was like March, right, that we got together. Yeah. I had just finally decided I was going to download the GarageBand app on my iPhone. Like, not even the real GarageBand.
I remember that. You didn't have a Mac?
No, I didn't have a Mac. Now I do. Thank God. But listen, all I had was the app, and I was like painstakingly teaching myself to program on that app. And this was like the first thing I ever worked on. I could possibly show this to someone at this point, and it wouldn't sound like a total dumpster fire.
It's scary. It's scary to even tell somebody, like, oh, I thought about doing that once, let alone like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die if I don't try this, you know? But,
here's my dumpster fire of a GarageBand
and all that just, demo. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so we got in the car, and we were in Marietta Square. It was me, you, and Amanda, your sister-in-law.
In my 2000 Honda Civic. God rest her soul.
Oh, okay, that one didn't make it. So, so she plays the song. I cry, which is not that unusual, but I cried. I feel like even that night, I feel like my immediate response was, we have to write together. Can we please start writing together?
Yeah.
And we did.
And we did. And we followed through, and we did.
We did.
Because one thing we're good at is scheduling and planning things. So we did it.
That is no joke.
It is no joke. You know, sometimes when you're developing new strengths, you have to really remember the strengths you already have. And that was a strength we had.
So we talked about that.
Yeah.
I remember the first couple times we got together, and it was almost like, are we allowed to do this? How do we do this? It put me at so much ease, because I remember you saying, okay, this is what we're both really good at. And so we would like literally sit out and make lists of like, and they were mostly goals. Obviously we worked on songs too.
Yeah. But at first it was like, it's okay, you know, because we felt so like vulnerable and amateur about like, let's create some music. I mean, I know, especially in hindsight, I mean, I understood it then too, but exactly why you cried when you heard that song, because it's about, I've got to do this. But I really, at that time, I didn't know the half of how much your story had in common with my story of like, this is a returning to for you also. Mm-hmm. You heard through the dumpster fire and got the actual message, which is just like everything I ever hoped for my music. But it was like, okay, we're going to show up and we're going to use the strengths we have. But how do you get from A to B?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we had to show up and we had to start where we were.
We had to start.
Yeah.
Even feeling that way and feeling like everybody must want to do this and I'm not qualified, so I'm going to, just forget about it. And then realizing like, actually, there must be something more to this because this isn't going away. Right. And I actually think maybe this is something that is going to really add a lot of value and for me joy to my life if I let myself do it. I think that and coming to an understanding of all of that and letting ourselves begin in that is also very different than thinking we're going to take over the freaking world. Like we're going to have number one hits. Like I just want to put that out that's like not what we're saying.
Right.
Like if anything, I mean, we want this whole podcast and our journey to be an encouragement to people to like, even if you think nothing can come of it, except that you get to do the thing you want to do, then freaking do it.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that goes back to what I feel like has really become our philosophy about this, which is to treat every single step in the process as an experiment.
Yeah.
And you said this earlier, like, which I think is so perfect and poignant, that's basically the way that we figured out how to give ourselves permission to do it, to show up, to try. And it's like to put yourself in a position to like have any sort of chance, you know? And I just love that whole idea that treating it like an experiment is what gives you the permission to do it, because anybody can treat it like an experiment.
Well, and I feel like that was probably your idea, because I remember you saying that early on, like I'm such a perfectionist. And so what that means is I weigh every single possibility before I make a decision. It's really annoying even to myself. So I feel like I'm like remembering something I feel like happened in your kitchen one day. It was like, I'd come to you with some like existential like question, you know, but like, how do we do this? And like, what's going to happen if, you know, whatever. And I feel like you were like, okay, but this is just an experiment. Like, let's just see what happens. And that gave me so much calm and freedom through the whole process. Even fast forward, we were going to Nashville to work on, you know, the songs with a producer we didn't know and like all this stuff. But it was like, this is the next step.
Right.
And for me, it really was so much less scary to not have to have the whole picture figured out, but to be like, what do I have to do this month?
Right.
And like, what are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And sometimes it was so small. It was like, well, this one line in the song sounds weird, so let's try to figure out an alternative.
Totally.
You know, it was like the smallest things, but when you figure that out, it feels amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's gratifying, and it's also momentum. Like, it's evidence that you're making progress, you know, which is like super crucial in the subjective wishy-washy world of like, what am I doing? You know, how does this work? I mean,
you know, this world we live in of social media, like I've really kind of been on pretty much a break for the last couple of years of actually talking about anything personal in there, because it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so that doesn't fit in with all the people you see out there with thousands of followers who are like, do this, you know, here's 10 steps to this. And like, there's nothing wrong with that stuff. But I think it can really paralyze you if you let it.
Yeah.
And thinking that like, you don't have the tools you need to begin.
Right. Exactly. Because you never see their beginning spot.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, even right now, people are seeing our spot 3 years from the beginning.
Yeah.
3 years.
Try not to be too impressed, guys. It doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. Skill half the time doesn't matter in a lot of things, you know?
Yeah.
If you're going to...
At least not beginner level skill.
Yeah, if you're going to... Like, who knows how to, like, perform surgery their first day of med school, you know? Like, you learn. You hopefully put in a ton of practice and hours, and if it's the thing that you really want to dedicate your life to, you get there, you know.
Totally. One thing that was really striking to me also, like during those couple of years where I was waffling on and off about music, but I was building up my practice and all of that, and then I got to that screeching honesty moment of like, oh no, is this it? You're right. Boredom is part of it. I don't know if you can tell, I talk kind of fast. Probably definitely an extrovert of sorts. And I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of things that I enjoy. I mean, I've always got 15 plates spinning in my life. Like, I just operate in a little bit of a whirlwind all the time. Partially because I like do love life and I like have a zest for a lot of things. And that's just kind of how I am. It was very profound the way that music came back around to me and almost like said to me, hey, like I'm not just another thing that you like to do. There's likes and then there's life passions. Music came back around and smacked me in the face and was like, hey, I'm that. I'm not just like another thing that you like or that you kind of enjoy or that you would like to do occasionally on the weekends when you have time. That was a huge distinction for me because I spent a lot of years just spinning a lot of different plates because I kind of like a lot of different things, but music is so different than that to me. It's on another level. So I just think that distinction is important, and it's really based on getting a lot of experience and doing a lot of other things and having that to compare it to, but also having like sense of knowing. Part of the appeal for me of having a career in counseling was that it was almost like a guarantee that I wouldn't waste my life. Like it was almost a guarantee that I would do something that would help other people. And, even some of my friends who are also counselors and stuff, my grad school friends, who knew that I was a musician. They knew all about me going to do these gigs and stuff while I was in grad school. And they were really supportive of that. But when I would express to them, like, man, I really want to do that too. Like, I love both of these things. And it's like, I know they were trying to support me in saying this, but they would often say things like, well, your clients and like people who are broken and hurting, like they need you more than like the radio needs you.
Ew.
I know, but but don't judge them because I'm sure that the way I was explaining it was like they were trying to validate my reasoning, because that very much was my reasoning. I'm like, this song ain't going to save anybody's life, but maybe my therapeutic work with people like legitimately and very concretely is. Mm-hmm. And so to me, like I put a lot of stock in that. And I like had this realization a few years ago, all the pain and problems and difficult times I've been through in my life, through all of those things, what would I tell you saved my life? And 100% of the time, it was music. It was the artist that got me through those times. And maybe that sounds cheesy or cliche, but I just realized what a ridiculous double standard I was setting about that. Like, how am I going to sit here and say like, oh, it's just music? The musician, was going to sit here and say, oh, it's just music. When I literally will credit some musicians that, I listened to throughout my life with saving my life. Like I really will. And I mean that. Mm-hmm. So it just really made me realize what a rudimentary idea about helping people I had.
I love that. Here's something that I was thinking of the whole time you were talking. It's like what I think we've gotten to in this society of do the responsible thing, take care of these things first, and then if there's any time left, pursue that thing that is in you that you can't explain, but like it's important to you.
Right.
I think where that has brought us as a society is people who are bored, people who are just frankly unhappy, and they're out there now trying to give advice to younger people of like how to get to where they need to be. And it's just like this terrible, like never ending
perpetuating
cycle.
Yeah.
And it's like, I find so much value. If it was music, if it was something totally obscure, like if you said to me like, this is what I think I'm most passionate about, then I'm going to say to you 100 out of 100 times, chase it. Yeah. Like go do it. Don't look for reasons why it makes sense. Yeah. Because that is going to make you a more full human being. Yes. And that is what is going to contribute to the world.
Well, and the thing I love about your book, by the way,
hey, thanks.
Hey, is that is so incredibly not limited to like the creative / I'm using creative in air quotes too, but the artistic fields, which for us, like our scary thing happens to be within that category, but we're aware that there are people who are so passionate about all kinds of other things. And, that just makes me think like, that's exactly why this idea that if everyone, in my mind, I think of it like if everyone actually had the courage to pursue the thing that they're really made for. It's not some crazy utopian dream.
Right.
Because there's so much variation in that, and not everybody has that kind of passion about music. It's not like we'd have 99 musicians and one accountant,
Absolutely. I don't believe that at all.
No.
And that's always the excuse, especially with music. It's like everybody goes to the American Idol excuse. Well, like, why didn't people tell those people they can't sing?
Right.
And it's like, first of all, that's TV. That's made up. and those producers are encouraging them because they want good TV.
That's right.
So forget that. But I absolutely agree. I think if people did what they were the most passionate about, everything would be taken care of, every job. And like how many people thought they weren't smart enough to become doctors that would have been amazing doctors?
Yeah.
Or, how many people were scared of saying they wanted to be a scientist? Like, I don't, that's not my story, so I can't tell it.
Right.
But that's one thing we want to do on this podcast is really open it up to hear from other people as well who, are doing something that, if we heard it, we're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I never thought of that as an option. And yet they, as a little kid, were probably scared to death to pursue it. And so that's really something, we want this conversation to be open to all different walks of life and career choices as well.
It actually is. And like what you're saying about unhappy people or sort of like unfulfilled people or unrealized potential in people, it's about maybe there actually would be a better, healthier, more whole semblance of balance in our world if most of us weren't putting our passion thing on the back burner for like quote unquote reasons. That's all constructed too. You know, it's really wild when you really start digging into it, which is why I think it'll make a great podcast.
I hope so. We'll see.
We will.
Don't. But yeah, like something I'm trying to get across in the book is like, it all feels very make-believe when you think of it on that level. When you think of like, oh, wait, why did everybody say I had to go to college? And why did everybody say I had to do this, this, and this? And I'm not saying don't go to college. Like some careers, obviously you have to. I think not every career do you have to,
right.
So it's just like, it's like we were handed these rules at the door. When you really deconstruct all of that, it's like, I don't think that really is a rule. I'm standing here like miming to myself, so sorry, Anna, but like that's the only, I'm a very visual person. That's the only way I can think of it is like there's this invisible box around each of us. We can get out of it. We can freaking do whatever we want to do if we let ourselves.
Right.
But we've been told to stay in the box. If it's like the last thing I do on this earth, I want to help people get out of the box because the box isn't real and it doesn't exist.
Well, yeah. And just being able to acknowledge that as the truth is like extremely unsettling for most people, I
see that.
Because that box is like, but this is what I've known. This is what I've based all my decisions on, but hey, full circle though, like that's exactly why the thing that you're made to do so often is the scary thing. That is part of exactly what makes it scary.
That's true.
Because usually doing that thing basically requires you to acknowledge that. And yikes.
You don't have the answers. You don't know how it's going to play out. You don't know if it will work out.
Yeah. It's like, well, if there's no box, then what actually is there? Mm-hmm. And you just have to start even when the best answer to that question you have is,
It's limitless.
That's right. What a great film.
Wasn't that about drugs? I don't know.
Anyway.
Yeah,
but had some MK Ultra vibes. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, because once again, I really feel strongly in this. The only real choice is, are you going to do it or are you not? And both of those come with tons and tons and tons of consequences.
Yes. Implications galore.
Implications, yes. And you could be happy both routes. I think that's probably the most paralyzing thing of it all.
Totally.
Like, what a hard choice. Like, I could be really happy and maybe, my family won't have to sacrifice as much. And I mean, there's just so many
what ifs.
Totally. And it's like, that's why I think we really have to rely somewhat on those deep internal knowing things to guide us, because like, you can just, I mean, I've done this so much, just tailspin in your mind about the possibilities and trying to chase down every rabbit and every implication. And those are only the ones you can actually foresee, which is like a small percentage.
Which are the ones
them.
that are not going to happen.
Exactly.
It's all the crazy stuff that hits
that
you in the face that you could have never imagined.
That you could never predict. Exactly. So it's just like, it's real easy and quick, I think, to spiral down to that and go like, well, then who's to say? I'll just keep taking the path of least resistance, I'll just keep doing the socially acceptable thing.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode all about Anna. For a little bit more about me, be sure to check out part K, The Most Beautiful Dream.
I think you do a good job of concising it.
It's like...
That's not a word.
Concisify. What? No, that's not a word either. I call it concisify.
Concisification.
Concising.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.